it wasn't just answer the phone. It wasn't just, reply back to an email within 24 hours. That's just table stakes. What it was is, hey, Kyle is coming in. What beverage do they like so that we have that ready to go? It's creating raving fans out of the clients.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, CEO and co-founder of Milemarker. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by another co-founder. This is Anand Sheth, the co-founder and CEO of Pulse 360, a really cool company in the wealth tech space that is built out of Anand's personal experience that we're going to dive into here. So I love companies that come from scratching your own itch, solving the problems that you dealt with and that created headaches for you on a regular basis. So Anand, thanks for taking time out to join us today.
Thanks, Kyle, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So I've started all of these off lately with the same question, and this is going to be no exception. So I call this question, what is your money moment? And so to frame that up, my question is, I've found through all of these dozens and dozens of conversations that everybody has a unique path into this industry. And I've found that most of it starts with a moment in your life that had to do with money that made you kind of realize that this was a career profession and a path to have in the first place. So for you, how'd you get into the industry? What was your money moment?
I joined right after the .com bust. My dad had lost quite a bit e-trading and day trading, and I wanted to see if there was something better. And so I joined after the .com. It was interesting when I went for my interview, the manager literally threw his Mercedes-Benz keys on the table and said, look, in 6 months, if you do well, you can have this as well. I'm like, oh my God. So it was like the boiler room, but it actually
I was going to say, that's a scene right out of the boiler room.
It is. It did happen. I was always interested in trying to help folks manage their money better. I also wanted to learn how to manage my own money better. I hadn't done that at all. And so it was ideal that I could learn, serve, and, help clients in that way.
Very cool. I love it, man. And then, so give us a little bit more of the background. So you get into the industry, you have your boiler room moment, which is hilarious. But then you moved from the client side, you got into the compliance side for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I tell all advisors in this industry for past 2 decades, I've done everything from serve coffee to clients to compliance. I was an advisor after I passed my Series 7 and all of those things. I became an advisor right after the first meeting that I had with a prospective client who hired me. I was shocked. It was interesting because they were close to their 50s. I was in my mid-20s, and I'm looking at it the next day and I'm like, this is not right. I don't have enough experience to help these folks. I could mess them up because I just didn't have. I was 6 months in the business, right? I reached out to a well-known advisor in our community and I said, hey, would you be able to teach me the business, basically? And so then I joined him as a paraplanner. From there, I went into compliance, back again as advisor, sold my practice. Then operations became my go-to forte because I'm a stickler for efficiency, and I saw the enormous amount of inefficiency that advisors have.
That's amazing. Okay, I want to sit on that for a second. So yeah, you went from doing a bunch of things, and then you were the COO of a firm for a couple of years. I want to just hear you talk about that and riff on that a little bit. I mean, everybody's got unique challenges when operating any business. I think RIAs have their own unique operation challenges. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of, T's that need to be crossed, I's that need to be dotted. But talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you had as the COO at a growing RIA.
I was lucky enough that the different advisors I worked with were always high-performing advisors. And one of the things that makes them successful is their eye to detail and how they want to provide an amazing client experience. I know in the industry we say, hey, provide a great client experience. These folks, it wasn't just answer the phone. It wasn't just reply back to an email within 24 hours. That's just table stakes for these folks. What it was is, hey, Kyle is coming in. What beverage do they like so that we have that ready to go? It's creating raving fans out of the clients, right? I'm growing the business through referrals. To be able to do that, though, operationally, it's very, very taxing to a practice because the lack of tools that talk to each other, the data resides in like 4 to 5 different places sometimes. For example, it could be in the advisor's head because that's what they remember, that, hey, their anniversary is coming up, for example, right? We can't send an anniversary gift because it was in the advisor's head. But to kind of have that all streamlined, it's very challenging. And that's sort of what led me to build Pulse, really, is to attempt to create a systematic way where it's easy for folks to enter their data, communicate with client, and just be able to provide that and create raving fans out of their clients. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart to take on that. But I was lucky enough that I was always with those type of advisors. And now it's become my mission is to help all these advisors, provide that value to their client and show the value that they're providing to the client. But behind the scenes, structurally, from an operations perspective, everything needs to be dialed in properly.
I love that because I think if you went to almost any business owner, it's like, hey, do you want to create raving fans? I mean, duh. Like who would say no to that, right?
Right.
But it's one of those classic things that it's, maybe simple, but not easy, right? As you're saying. And a lot of people probably don't appreciate everything that goes into creating raving fans, whether it's at a Four Seasons or, Ritz-Carlton or something like that, that's known for impeccable service, or a Michelin star restaurant, a 3 Michelin star restaurant, or in a wealth management firm. So I don't know, let's geek out for a second. Like give us some examples of like the everything that goes into on the operational side, creating raving fans, because we all know it's not just, hey, have a great meeting. It's like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into having a great meeting. There's a lot of stuff that goes into knowing what their favorite drink is or all of that type of stuff. How do you pull things out of an advisor's head so that an operational team can create raving fans? Like, geek out with us for a second on that.
Yeah. So I'll give you some examples, right? When we were there, the beverage one is a very simple one. When we know what the client is coming in, and we usually used to prepare a couple of weeks in advance, we would know, okay, Kyle likes black coffee with no sugar. So when they walk in, we would say, hey, Kyle, great to see you. By the way, we have black coffee with no sugar. Is that how you still like it? And that all of a sudden just says to you, for example, like, wow. And then on top of it, we have small talk, right? The advisors almost always have small talk. Now, look, for the maybe 20% of your client, an advisor is going to remember every detail, like the kid goes to this school, or they love Lakers, or they love the Celtics, or whoever. But you can't do that at scale for 100 clients or 200 clients, right? We would have all of those details that then we would pull together, and we'd have research. So we'd know that the Lakers lost last night, for example, right? So we'd have a conversation around that. So that just starts the small talk in different areas. Maybe they had taken a trip, right? And we hadn't seen any pictures. We didn't see it on Facebook anywhere. And so we would be able to kind of say, by the way, how was your trip, right? All of those soft points, we had a way of kind of bringing that up. And that goes a long way in establishing trust and creating that the client sees, okay, this team knows. And it's not just the advisor. All of us knew. Like, it wasn't just the advisor knew. We would be able to have that conversation if the advisor was not in the office. Then you go on to the actual matters of finance, right? We'll take an example. Let's say, Kyle, you want to buy a boat. Now that goes in a financial planning software. The challenge is, if I want my client person who's maybe answering the phone and setting up a meeting to know about that, she or he may not know how to go into that planning software and know those goals. The senior folks may, but everybody down the line may not. So how do you make sure that everybody knows this is without having them diving into complex software to try and find this? So that's where, with Pulse 360, for example, we've made it so that the data gets in. We send it off to the CRM for record keeping and all of that purpose, but we've made it so that it's super simple for everybody to just come and say, hey, what are some of the goals for Kyle? Or what is next meeting items that we know we got to cover, right, for Kyle? But it has to be systematic, right? You have to have that main interface to kind of just put in all this information, and it's one system versus everybody creating their own set of tools.
There's a lot of insight and knowledge into that. But one thing I'm just going to pull out, well, there's two things, but one thing I want to pull out is the thought I had as you're going through that is, I think sometimes it's easy. I'm trying to tread lightly here. It's easy for advisory businesses to maybe operate in a way that the client's assets are your business. But in reality, the clients are your business. And so the entire firm, including the operations team, the client service team, the trading team, everything should know about clients. Like I loved that you said that everybody in the firm, not just the advisor, should know about what clients like, what their preferences are, what they're trying to do, what they're, where they're trying to go, what their dreams and goals are. Because that's really what the business is. It is about serving those people, and their assets and their plan and everything like that is really just a part of who they are. So that was really insightful. I think that's good.
Yeah, we hear now, right? Especially with the AI and the robo advisors, and that hey, humans are at the center, and so advice is always going to be there with the clients. Yeah, but are you just paying lip service, right? Because if it's just one person who knows of everything about this client and the rest of your team is sort of kind of in a fog, you're not elevating yourself to be that next level advisor, right?
Well said. Let's dig in a little bit more because I think this will be a good segue into Pulse 360. But in that last answer, you also talked about how it's easy to assume that everybody in the firm knows how to use all of these software tools or knows how to go get certain data or knows what data they're looking for. But as you called out, maybe really just the most senior people, aka the most expensive resources, are spending their time hunting and gathering data, fishing for data and systems. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that the more senior people are the only ones who know where to find things or how to find things or where to look for things?
Our industry has, obviously it's finance, it's very technical. And so the softwares that are built and being used are also very technical in that sense. And you don't have the time necessarily as an advisor to start training everybody to use, for example, a financial planning software or a risk software or investment software. So it ends up being you segment out like, okay, here's our power planner that's just doing trading, for example, or financial planning. And now you're breaking apart and the siloing of who knows what, right? It's mainly because of the training time it takes to learn all these things. And candidly, I don't think as advisors, we have that time to say, let's sit down, everybody. Let's all learn financial planning software today. Because the advisor also may be thinking, well, the person who's scheduling may not need to know that. But actually they do, really. If you wanna have that raving fan service, then clients will know. Clients feel it. It's inherent. Like they know who knows what, right? They'll know, oh, these guys are on top of it, or yeah, this is a standard service. I don't believe in that. I'm all about just being at the very, very top. I've always worked with those top advisors, so my mindset has just been trained that way. I've gone to all the best conferences where I've absorbed like a sponge all of this different knowledge. So I think it just comes down to the time and also the goal of the advisor kind of saying, I don't have the time. I don't have the resource to train everybody on this, right?
Yeah, well said.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
So that kind of feeds us in a little bit to Pulse 360. I want to ask you about that with a little bit of personal experience. So back when I used to work with Riskalyze/Nitrogen, one of the things that always frustrated me is that, people only thought Riskalyze or Nitrogen was a risk tolerance questionnaire, but yet there was so much more built off of understanding what a client's risk number is. I think at least from the buzz that I hear in the industry, people just think Pulse 360 is a client note follow-up, or an agenda creator. And I think it's so much more than that. So you've explained the challenges that you had in the firms that you worked at before that led you to want to start Pulse. So tell us just, I think it goes beyond just, hey, this is a easier way to create a follow-up email after a meeting with the client. Talk to us about what the value prop of Pulse is and what it does for firms.
I'll be the first one to admit I'm guilty of not learning marketing properly and messaging, as far as what we do. I'm actually in the middle of, we're creating a proper marketing message. Now I'm working with Three Crowns, Johnny and his team. I built it, and I'm going back to the roots of why I built Pulse. It was because I wanted the advisor and the team to create raving fans, because those create referrals, which grows your practice. To create that, you need a very solid system behind the scenes. We started with meeting agendas and meeting summaries, mainly because meetings are at the heart of an advisor practice. It creates a ton of work before, and it creates post-meeting work, and there's a lot of golden nuggets being captured during that time. So that's why our focus is there to say, let's handle the agenda and the post-meeting. But from there, you can then create an annual summary. You can send out an email to a client saying, hey, you've told me these are your beliefs and values. Guess what? I'm listening to you. I have it documented. Or, for example, you send out an email to a tax person at the end of the year and saying, by the way, for Kyle and his family, we made these trades. You're going to get 1099s, 5498s, but guess what? Here's the story of what it is. And so Pulse is really trying to help from that perspective, is so that you can tell a story. I mentioned value of an advisor, right? We ourselves tend to forget how much we provide our clients. For example, maybe 3-4 years ago, you may have told a client, hey, refinance. Well, that could have thousands of dollars of implication, right, for the client. If they did that, now you have technically saved them maybe $10,000, $20,000 of interest, right, or more. Well, how do you track that? And so with Pulse, we have built systems so that you can put those markers on, and now you can bring it up into a report later and say, here's everything we've done for your client. You're not going to put it on their face, but you yourself as an advisor and the team can know, okay, we've provided a ton of value here. So guess what? If a fee conversation comes up, we're confident. If they come in, we can ask for referrals because we're confident in what we've provided.
And so, I don't know, tell us a little bit about how you do that, right? So I think the value propositions there is good. At least what I heard is we help tell the story of the value you're providing through these meetings, through this advice that you're providing. Because I do think it's a big challenge for advisors. At least what we hear is, clients are often in that mindset, for better, for worse, of what have you done for me lately? Not what did you do 5 years, but 5 years ago, that might have been, a decision or a piece of advice worth tens of thousands of dollars compounded over a couple of years. That's very meaningful, right? And you're not going to have one of those moments in every meeting or every review or anything like that. So I love the value proposition of telling the story, keeping the pulse of the value of the relationship between an advisor and a client. But tell us a little bit about how that actually gets executed in the sea of advisor technology tools that they use today.
From the get-go, when we built Pulse, we wanted it to be a powerful piece of software for them. And also, we didn't want them to duplicate any of their work. So we built integration with the CRMs, Redtail, Wealthbox, Salesforce. So any notes, rather than you putting them into those CRMs first, we recommend you put them in Pulse, because you can create a meeting summary that then you can have tasks basically get created. Let's say there's an anniversary coming up, right? Going back to providing this raving service, there's an anniversary coming up and you want to send a gift of some sort, specific. Maybe you captured don't send them, flowers because they don't like flowers, but chocolates they love, right? So with Pulse, what you could do is you could add that in and organize it in a certain way that now you can pull that up later. You can create a task in your CRM from Pulse so that when that time comes, you have the task appearing up in Redtail or Wealthbox or Salesforce, reminding your team, hey, we need to send something, or from a chocolate, just being more proactive in that sense, right? A lot of times we are very reactive, and that is always hair on fire situation, versus if you start working and start getting organized from your meeting that you just had, now 6 months later, a year later, your life is just a lot better because you were more proactive than reactive. And so Our work with the CRMs is very, very critical from that perspective because we send the notes there so you have it, and the tasks and the workflows can get kicked off in those CRMs. So your team is actually working, while Pulse gives you a better organization system. Many advisors today that use Pulse say we've become like a second brain for them. Our mission is in that direction. You mentioned Pulse. That's why we named it Pulse. We want the advisor, the team, and the client to have a pulse on everything that's going on.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. So let's zoom out away from Pulse itself for a second and move into a segment I like to do, which is like, I want Anand to get out his crystal ball and tell us where he thinks the industry is going. So it doesn't necessarily have to be technology focused. You can talk about firms themselves or technology, whatever you want, but give us kind of a prediction. What do you see happening in this space over the next 5 years?
I know I am probably the only one that's saying this, but from an AI perspective, AI is a game changer. You can use AI in multiple places, right? There's, of course, portfolios where AI is going to start recommending, different portfolios. That's more on the advisor side of things. But I also see from a consumer side of stuff that there are going to be tools made available where certain segment of clients that we today have a difficult time serving just because it's not economical are going to be provided with tools where AI is going to answer their questions, like, should I do an IRA, a Roth or an IRA, for example, right? And I can easily see a chatbot start asking questions that these people can just answer. I know many advisors feel that that's far-fetched and that, humans are always needed. Yeah, humans are certainly going to need it, I think, more for the, mid-market to larger clients, basically. But a lot of other clients could just get help from this. I'll give you an example. I use AI now over my doctor. Now, you may think I just have bad doctors. No, I have 3 different primary care doctors. I pay for a separate, service that gives me that access. I basically know what the symptoms I may have, or my daughter may have, or my wife may have, and I check with AI first. And then when I go in, when they start going in a different angle, I kind of bring this up. And I think if I am using today, which is not even the technology fully built out, but because I can see and I can assess and have some critical thinking on what the AI is giving me back, I think it's just going to get better, right? It's not going to go backwards. That's for sure. The other part of this is, I think from a data perspective, what you guys are doing, I think that's going to be a very, very critical industry moment when people start realizing that they need to have ownership over their data, or control, not just ownership, but just control also. They can manage where it's going. I think that's an important angle for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your point about how AI is not going to get worse, right? I mean, there's going to be lots of probably regulation or thoughts, or, everybody's going to want to get their hands in shaping this and all of that type of stuff, but it's only going to get more accurate, more convenient, more powerful. That's something I would bet on. I don't know what that actually looks like for all of us as people. And I think that's what makes folks concerned, is because everybody's, afraid of the unknown. And if it is a monumental shift in our lives, that's always different for people, but it is only going to get better. And I think that is going to have wide ranging implications. For a lot of folks.
I'm in the startup phase. I'm in the AI world. I've been in the AI world way before even AI became very sexy. I've always been interested. In fact, I almost went in to study about AI back in the middle of 1990s. I'm dating myself now. I didn't do AI at that time. It wasn't at the execution level. It was more at the research level at that time. And I didn't want to spend time researching. I'm the person who likes to execute, right? Obviously with my COO background. What I have seen even several years ago of these different companies just doing things, and not in advisory world, but just outside. If these technologies get developed enough and start releasing, it's going to be amazing, from that perspective. I do want to make a point. I know there's folks that are afraid that the jobs are going to go, right? Overall, as a society, that's an interesting challenge that AI does provide. I feel in the advisory world, we have a lot of folks doing manual, mundane work that is going to be removed. And so now, instead of you letting them go, you actually should promote them into more higher revenue producing activities, right? You don't need to prepare a report with a certain fields and data and whatnot. Guess what? That's being done with a single click now instead of 20, 30 minutes. Now use that time for the person who was doing it into much better stuff. In our industry, it's very hard to come by people and then to train them. You can't let that asset go out the door just because AI now has replaced what they used to do, for example, right? They need to be promoted.
I totally agree. I think more of what I hear in our space is that it's hard for people to find enough help, to do all of the work that they have. So if AI can come in and help reduce some of the sort of tedious stuff, which, again, you sat on the operations side. I've talked to a lot of operations people where it's like you come in and the first 3 hours of every day are already booked up because you have, whatever, these repeating tasks that you just have to do to operate the firm before you can get into any of the other stuff that's coming. If AI can help with that, you are freeing up time of some of your more valuable people who have a lot of knowledge about the firm to do more high leverage stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be welcomed by everybody. I actually don't know how many jobs it will destroy or replace. I think it's going to free a lot of the people doing things in our space right now, like 30 to 50% efficiency gains, which could be, pretty transformative for the industry.
I was looking at AI from a different angle, from not our industry, but we've given a lot of jobs offshore, right? These offshore jobs are, let's say, for example, insurance claims. Well, that is going to be at risk because AI can start processing these claims with a certain set of rules, right? It's just decision tree, basically. So folks who are, kind of in that world, they do need to think about what it is that how do they skill up so that they are not made, redundant just because now AI is coming in. Those type of things I can see. From a financial advisory industry perspective, we need our people. We don't have them, so we got to move them up and into another area.
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. That's a good crystal ball segment. All right, so I want to talk about something outside of work. I know you're very passionate about photography.
Yeah.
I know you use photography to help the underprivileged a little bit too, but tell us about where the passion for taking pictures came from and how you got involved with helping some underprivileged people with photography and how that plays out.
I loved photography when I was growing up. I think it was the National Geographic picture of that Afghan lady that got me. And I think it's been a mission for me to try and capture one of those moments ever since. Now, of course, we know there's a little bit backstory to that, but I didn't know that at that time. I want to capture people in a portrait setting, for example, and have their souls come through the photograph. And that's just all going back to that National Geographic. And we used to get National Geographic. I was born in Africa, so we used to get it there. And I was just seeing all the pictures. I always wanted to be a National Geographic photographer. Now seeing the behind the scenes, no, I can't do that. I can't be in a swamp, right? Trying to wait for a snake to come out or whatever may be the case. I'd rather just see the pictures now. But so since I developed the skills of, I became a professional photographer. I have all the professional gear. I thought, how can I help folks who can't get a photo? And so there was an organization they started up, which was an amazing idea. I wish they would restart it again. They stopped, but they basically said during Christmas holidays, basically a month in November or something, we would all go and we'd bring all these folks who some of them were homeless. We would have makeup people, make them look good, and then we would take pictures and then we'd print them out and deliver the pictures to them. I think it was the most fulfilling thing I've done. There was a group of Indian students that came from India that were poor and, didn't necessarily have any of the latest technologies or any of these things. And so I offer, and it's always an open from my side. Anytime they need it, they just call me and I'll go and take pictures of them. I look back at those pictures and those are not public. I haven't made any of those public, but I just go back and look at those pictures and the joy you see in these kids who have nothing basically compared to what we have, it's amazing. I enjoy that part from that perspective.
A lot of lessons to be learned from that. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say your answer about being a National Geographic photographer, how you have to be in the swamp and how you'd rather just see the pictures. I feel like that's a great callback to what you were talking about, how to create raving fans, right? A lot of us just want to have the raving fans, but we don't want to sit in the swamp to wait for the snake to come out, or all, the work that goes on behind the scenes to create that end product is immense. And a lot of us just love to consume the end product without maybe fully appreciating what goes into it.
Yeah.
Interesting connection.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes.
Anand, we're going to move into the final segment of the show. We call this the Mile Marker Minute. It's a lightning round series of questions. The goal is to have all of them answered in 60 seconds or less. We don't always stick to it, but that's the goal here. You ready to fire away?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. As a photographer, Canon or Nikon?
Nikon.
All the way through?
Easy peasy. Yeah.
I love it. Fantastic. My second question for you is, are you an early bird or are you a night owl?
Both.
Okay, hold on. You gotta elaborate a little bit for us on that. How can you be both?
I am usually up around 5:30, 6, and I don't go to sleep until probably midnight or so.
Man, so you're just one of those superhumans who doesn't need that much sleep, huh?
I do need, but I have a mission I'm on.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. Okay. One place that you want to travel that you've never been to before.
I want to say Patagonia, Argentina, Patagonia.
Very cool. And then favorite industry conference to travel to and to go tell the Pulse story at.
So I will say Nitrogen / Riskalyze. First name comes up is Riskalyze, of course, but Nitrogen. Aaron and Dan were very generous to me in my first year when I launched Pulse to have me, have a booth there at a, substantially discounted rate, and so I will always have that close to my heart.
Incredible, man. Great answers. Thanks so much for coming and sharing a bunch of deep insights about what it takes to create raving fans. Everybody wants them, but what does it actually take to make that happen? How to use software tools, some great insights on AI, and sharing your passion for photography with us. So Anand, it was a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Kyle. And thanks for everybody for listening.
Absolutely. It's been another episode of The Connected Advisor. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe or follow us on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, and we'll see you on the next episode.